All right, so I thought we could use a create a prototype that dealt with an API that worked with movies, right? They would allow you to search movies, search details about them, who the director is, the cast, and whatnot. I'm going to use an API called omdb API, and this API allows you to query for information about TV shows, movies, and it has a free version and a paid version. I'm using the paid version. The only difference is that the unpaid version has a limit on how many queries you can do a day. But other than that, most of the usability is the same. I am going to be using my key that I pay for. Don't use my key. But these are all the URLs have the following pattern. They start with omdb API with the URL, and then you provide the API key, and then you can ask for a whole bunch of things. You can search for movies or TV shows by their title, so by saying T equal and then some title. You can do open-ended searches with saying S and then the what do you want to search for. So you can provide maybe a director or an actor or genre or whatever, and it'll search any movies that meet your criteria. You can also ask if you know the exact ID or primary key for your movie. You can provide it also as a parameter of I equal, and then the IMDb ID for that movie, and then it'll give you more information about that specific movie. I have some example queries here. Let's see. So this one, you can search. You can say S and then say Batman, and then it returns all the movies with that title, right? Now it comes back with by default it comes back with only the first 10 items that match your criteria, but it tells you how many there are in total that meet your criteria. This is considered to be the first page of multiple pages of results. You can ask for the nth page. In total, here we have 37 pages, 370 divided by 10 items per page. But I think if you say P, you say P equal, and then you can say what page do you want, and it'll give you those 10 items within that page. Yes. Yes.
So the proper thing to do if you wanted all of them would be to get one, and then just loop through it divided by 10.
Yes.
There's no size.
Yeah. No. There's no give me all of them.
That's kind of lame.
Yeah. Well, most of the thing is that most queries, whatever you're going to search for, it's always going to be whatever information you're ever going to consume is only ever going to be a small sliver of whatever the actual total data is, right? Even when you do a select star from a table that has millions of records, you're only ever going to see a small subset of that. The client will only show 100 at a time, say. And as you scroll forward, right, it'll go fetch more and fill it in. So it gives you the semblance that you're consuming all the content, but that's not true, right? You're only ever looking at a small snippet of whatever the total data set is. Yes.
Yeah, but this API doesn't provide the user to control pagination, right? So
no, right. The API does, right? The API you can give me page. You can randomly jump between the pages.
It forces you to fetch 10 at a time, though. So
right. No, but you could provide like for instance, the Google does the same thing, right? They show you the first 10, and they had an API. They had a user interface that if you scroll down, it fetches more, right, and it fills it in as you scroll down. If you scroll up, same thing, right? It searches above. Same thing with Google Maps, right? Google Maps it never loads the entire world, right? There's always a small snippet of the world that you're ever going to look at. Same thing with games, right? You never load the entire game, the entire world. As you move through the game, you only load whatever's visible to the user. Same thing. So it's managing large amounts of data has always the same challenge, that you're only ever looking at whatever you actually need at that moment, and it's just-in-time loading. Otherwise, it'd be impossible to load the millions and millions of records. So you could use this technique to give the semblance that it's a continuous scrolling. You show the first 10, and as you start scrolling down, you fetch the next 10, right? And you cache them in the client. And as you keep scrolling down, you fetch the next 10, and so on and so forth, right? And it's up to you what do you want to do with the older ones. Do you want to throw them away? And because eventually you're going to have thousands of records in the browser, and the browser's not going to be able to handle all this data, stored in the memory of the browser. At some point, you're going to have to start cleaning up and throwing away some cache data. Anyway, so the search parameter here, attribute, shows an array of objects that presumably each represents movies that meet your criteria. Now, the data in each one of these objects it's a summary of the total information that it has about that particular movie. So this is a snippet of the object, right? So it has some of the more common things that you might be interested in. It has the title, the year, the IMDb. This is the unique primary key that you could use to go fetch more information about that specific object. Also, it has a poster, right? If you click on it, it has some graphics associated to that particular movie, right? So you could use this as for rendering, a brief summary result set, right? That if you want more information, you can then use the IMDb to go fetch more information about that movie. Yes.
I mean, I just totally unrelated. I feel like that's a blatant copyright violation.
Of what? Of the image?
Pay to access it.
You mean the poster?
Yeah, kind of, right?
Yes, and I'm not quite sure if that's available if you don't pay for it. I'm not quite sure if I think they're using Amazon's as bucket, and I'm sure there's some copyright deal behind the scenes here. So if you want more information about that specific movie, you can then instead of using the S query, you can say I, and you provide the IMDb, and it fetches more information about that specific movie, right? Where you could have the genre, the director, the writer, actors, plot, ratings in IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic. So it has much more information about all this, right? And you have to make if you're going to build an application around this, at some point you have to make a decision of whether I'm going to store any of this in my own database. Presumably, whatever remote database you're using, it's their livelihood. They own this data. They make sure that it's up to date. And ideally, you want to minimize any cached data that you might store in your own database, since presumably this is kind of like the source of truth, right? And any information that you might be caching in your own database is likely to become stale, right? That you will only store anything in your database enough for your application to be usable, right, to your constituents, to your audience. Yes. So presumably, maybe what you might do in your own database, if you want to cache any of this, probably the title, maybe a link to the image, enough for you to render in your profile. These are my favorite movies, right? And probably I'll need maybe a thumbnail. I'll need the title of the movie, and that's it. Maybe the IMDb as well, so that if with the IMDb, I can always navigate to a details page, right? That I can then query for the rest of the information and download it from the remote server. Make sense? Right, so that's a little bit of an architectural design decision that you need to make, right? How much do I want to store in my own database if this is already being stored in somebody else's database, right? Maybe the IMDb, if I'm only notice that the only thing I really need to store in my own database is just the IMDb, right? But that would make it very inconvenient for me to in my application if I want to render all your favorite movies. I would need to use the IMDb to go fetch the rest of the information, the title and stuff from the remote server, right? It's very inconvenient. Probably I want to store that in my own database, right? So that I can render these images, these lists very quickly. Anyway, again, that's an architectural decision. Okay, so with these two queries, where I provide the ID, or if I provide a general query, with those two, we could do quite a bit interesting application around that, right? So let's see how we could do this. Let's use this example so that we can implement a page that allows you to search for different movies, and then perhaps a details page that allows you to show the details of a specific movie. Yes? All right, so let's do that.